Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really powerful essay by Mehdi J. Hakimi. It makes a very serious legal claim that the horrific violence against the Hazara people in Afghanistan isn't just a series of tragic attacks. It is, legally speaking, a genocide.
Now, that's not just a word you throw around, it's a specific legal charge. So how do you actually prove something that serious under international law? We're going to unpack exactly how the author builds that case, step by meticulous step, using the Genocide Convention as a framework.
But, before we dive into all the legal arguments, we really have to understand who we're talking about. Who are the Hazaras? What's the real-world situation on the ground that leads to this kind of legal case in the first place?
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get some context on the Hazaras and their history. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what genocide actually means in a legal sense. From there, we'll see how the author makes the case piece by piece, and we'll finish up with the essay's call for action.
To really understand the argument, the essay says you can't just look at what's happening today. What it really hammers home is that these attacks are part of a long, devastating pattern of persecution that goes back more than 100 years.
And wow, when you see it laid out like this, the history is just brutal. This timeline shows a clear pattern of mass atrocities, starting with a catastrophic event in the 1800s that decimated the population, and then just continuing with these horrible massacres in recent decades. This history is the essential backdrop for the entire legal argument.
Right, so to follow the case that the author is making, we've got to be super clear on the word genocide. It's not just a term for a horrible crime, it has a very, very precise definition in international law. And understanding that definition is the key to everything.
So here's the absolute core of it, right? From the Genocide Convention. It's not just about the act of killing. It's about the specific intent behind the killing. It's the calculated, deliberate goal of destroying a particular group of people. That intent is what separates it from other mass crimes.
So basically, it comes down to a three-part legal test. To prove genocide, the author has to show all three of these things. First, that the Hazaras are a protected group. Second, that specific prohibited acts were committed against them. And third, and this is almost always the hardest part to prove, that these acts were done with the specific intent to destroy them as a group.
Okay, so we've got the legal checklist. Now, let's see how the essay takes this framework and applies it directly to the Hazara people. We're going to walk through how the author tries to check all three of those boxes.
First up, are the Hazaras a protected group? The essay argues this is a slam dunk. They're a distinct ethnic group, they have their own unique dialect, and they're primarily Shia Muslims in a country that's mostly Sunni. So, according to the author, they clearly fit the definition, checking off box number 1.
Okay, on to the second element, the prohibited acts. This is where the argument shifts from identity to the cold, hard reality of the violence being inflicted. And, well, the scale is just staggering.
Just look at this number, taken from UN reports. Nearly 2,500 civilian casualties in just a 4.5-year span. The essay uses data like this to establish the sheer scale and intensity of the violence that's being directed at the Hazara community. And what this table really shows you is the pattern. This isn't one tragic, isolated event. The author points to this UN data to show a relentless, systematic campaign of violence. You can see it year after year, consistent, targeted attacks documented by the UN.
And this is a really important point the author makes. Genocide isn't only about killing. The convention also covers acts designed to destroy a group's way of life, forcing them from their homes, destroying their ability to grow food, cutting off water. The argument here is that all these things are being done to the Hazaras with the same ultimate goal, their destruction.
All right, and this brings us to the third and honestly the most difficult part of making a genocide case. Proving intent. How in the world do you prove what was going on in the minds of the perpetrators? Let's see how the essay tackles this.
Well, sometimes you get what you could call a smoking gun. The essay points to direct evidence like this. When a group like ISIS-K claims an attack and explicitly calls the victims infidels who have a right to be killed, the author argues that's about as clear a declaration of genocidal intent as you can get.
But what if you don't have a direct confession? The essay argues that you can infer intent by looking at the pattern of the attacks. When perpetrators are seen separating Hazaras from others before killing them, or when you see systematic attacks on Hazara mosques and schools, or even a maternity hospital, the author says that pattern isn't random, it's by design.
So, after building this entire legal case brick by brick, arguing that the Hazaras are a protected group,
that prohibited acts have been committed against them, and that there's clear evidence of intent, the essay asks a huge question. Now what? What does this mean for the rest of the world?
And here's the final critical takeaway. The Genocide Convention isn't just a document that defines a crime from the past. It's an active treaty. It places a legal duty on every country that signed it to prevent and to punish genocide. So the author's conclusion is really powerful. If the legal case is there, then doing nothing is actually a violation of international law.
And so, the whole argument leaves us wrestling with this huge, pressing question. It pushes the conversation beyond legal theory and into the realm of global responsibility. It forces us to ask, what must be done when the evidence points to one of humanity's gravest crimes unfolding right before our eyes?